So Alien Earth is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Seriously, I haven't seen something this bad since The Last of Us Season 2, and... Oh wait, that wasn't that long ago. God damn, what's happening in television lately? The thing that leaves me scratching my head the most about Alien Earth is the question of, who is this show for? Is it for the fans of the Alien franchise? Because it doesn't really feel like an Alien TV show. In fact, aliens are hardly in it. Most of the show surrounds these weird androids that are part robot and part small dying child. Even when there are aliens in the episode, it mostly focuses on these other, new, creepy aliens like the eye octopus and the bug creatures. It doesn't really feel like a story that fits into the Alien franchise, and is instead a generic science fiction show with an alien skin slapped on top of it. Sure, they use words like android, Weyland-Yutani, and xenomorph, but it's not like you couldn't replace all this stuff with other names and titles and still get the same result. It's like the inverse of Andor, which is a show that used the Star Wars brand as a way to tell a really compelling story. Alien Earth, on the other hand, just uses its IP to bring the audience back in order to bore them to death with uninteresting ideas that lack any depth or humanity. It's boring, really. And dumb. Really, really dumb. But to understand my frustration fully, we're gonna need to break it down. Number 1. Hollow and disconnected characters. Now, it's no secret for any story to be compelling, you'll need at least one interesting character for the audience to get invested in. Someone likable, relatable, charming, admirable, brave, or wise, or just someone who's willing to be a part of a 2-hour-long Pepsi commercial. This helps the audience get invested into whatever wacky story you're trying to tell them, because they want to see these people succeed. This is especially true for science fiction stories, where the world is often more foreign and the ideas are more out of place than, let's say, a western or a romantic comedy set in, I don't know, New York City. Big scientific concepts can get a little dry after a while, so having someone with at least some personality can help smooth things over and add a little humanity to the subject matter. Whether it's a father trying to get back to his family, a young farmer trying to overthrow a fascist regime, or a badass Sigourney Weaver trying to survive on a cargo vessel with a horny alien. These kinds of characters have relatable goals or intrinsic values an audience can find appealing. Alien Earth, however, has none of this. There is not a single goddamn character in this entire show that has an ounce of relatability or could even be considered likable. I mean, except maybe Kirsch, but that's only because he's played by Timothy Olyphant. No one has any personality, and that's because the characters mostly consist of weird android-human hybrids. But even the people are hollow. Hermit, for example, has one of two settings throughout the show. Either he's shocked and quiet, or he's mildly sad and quiet, which essentially comes across as the same emotion on screen. Besides the fact that he wants to get his robot sister away from this evil corporation, he has no real goal or purpose. When we meet Hermit, he's a medic in the military. He's quickly thrown into action when the spaceship crashes into the city he's in. Hermit then has to go on a rescue mission to help the people at the crash site. So you'd think that this kind of character may have a deep-seated need to help people, or is overly empathetic and likes to serve humanity. Well, not if you're Hermit. I mean, sure, he helps some people, I guess. Wait, do we actually see him perform any medical assistance on anyone? He's got blood on his hands there. Oh look, there's a person on fire. Maybe he's gonna help them. No, he just walks straight by them. Okay. Oh, he asks an Indian kid if he needs help. Oh, he's a robot, he doesn't need help. Hey look, a party of innocent civilians. Maybe he'll warn them about the murderous alien that's lurking outside. No, just gonna let them die. Alright. And sure, you'd also think that these traumatic events would also take a toll on Hermit, but he maintains the same innocuous gaze throughout all of his scenes. He sees thousands of people die, he fights an alien, he watches his teammates and friends die, he reunites with his dead sister, and then he almost dies. But you never get the impression that this has any impact on him. In fact, it's like none of it happened at all.
How do I act so well?
And if the characters aren't vapid husks, then they're just shallow and obnoxious jerks. The only person in Alien Earth with any real presence is Cavalier. He's an asshole, and he loves it. But if the only guy in your show that has any personality is the most loathsome character around, then who are you supposed to connect to? Are we supposed to relate to the weird child androids that act like stumbling morons or complete psychopaths? Or how about the cyborg that is willing to let everyone he knows get killed for the sake of a murderous alien? Or how about this guy? Or him? Or her? The point is that I don't really care who wins or loses in this story because everyone is either too weird or too evil to get invested in. Number 2. Tone. A huge problem with Alien Earth is how the show feels. There isn't a consistency in how everything is presented, and typically the show is all over the place, to the point where it becomes hard to tell if we're supposed to be laughing, or feeling tense, or rolling our eyes. For those of you who don't know, tone is what you could call the emotional flavor of the story. This is established through music, dialogue, genre, and so on. For example, in an old-timey romance, there will be a lot of melodic violin music to underscore the deep feelings the characters have for one another. Or a comedy will typically have ridiculous dialogue or over-the-top physical humor to create an aura of lightheartedness and joy. Blending these tones together can be difficult, and typically films and TV shows will mostly stick to one tone in order to tell a consistent story. Alien Earth, however, can't seem to decide whether it wants to be a deep science fiction drama, a goofy alien slasher flick, or some kind of witty action show with lots of quips and funny dialogue. For example, during the crash sequence, we see Hermit's team cracking jokes and acting like everything is fine when they just witnessed thousands of people die. It makes the whole sequence feel much more lighthearted and inconsequential. After all, I'm not sure how many police officers and firefighters were cracking jokes when they watched the World Trade Center collapse.
It reminds me of that tragedy.
Oh, 9/11.
Yeah, don't laugh at 9/11
What?
again. 9/11.
And of course, you could say that this is simply a harsh and uncaring future where things like sympathy and empathy are a lot more rare. But that only proves my point that this story utterly lacks that core of humanity that is essential for the audience's investment. Now, I understand playing around with odd ideas and concepts in science fiction, but it immediately becomes apparent that putting retarded children in the bodies of adult robots is more of a setup for a Spaceballs sketch rather than a serious story about killer aliens. Having adults walking around and acting like children when people are dying by the thousands simply doesn't gel well with the tone. We as the audience can't take the story seriously if the characters aren't going to either. All of this is to say that there is no real feelings of stakes in Alien Earth. The characters laugh off danger, any consequences are met with indifference, and nobody properly reacts to the situations that they are in. So when someone dies, it doesn't really have any impact. This makes the whole show feel really hollow and boring to watch because there isn't any emotional investment. Number 3. Stupid is as stupid does. Pretty much every character in Alien Earth is a dumb asshole. So dumb, in fact, that it makes Ellie from The Last of Us look like a genius in comparison.
I'm gonna be a dad.
Now, it's not unusual for characters in horror stories to be kind of incompetent. However, in the original Alien film, the crew of the Nostromo aren't prepared for the situation they're in. They're space truckers working on a commercial vessel. They aren't scientists or experts on alien life forms. So there's a very excusable reason for their bad decision making. They are simply unaware of the real danger they're in, and they underestimate the alien. This adds to the tension of the story because in reality, the characters are reacting pretty much the same way most audience members would. It makes the movie more compelling, relatable, and more believable. However, Alien Earth does not have this excuse. All of the main characters are not only prepared for the aliens, but they also have intimate knowledge about their species. This turns the tension into frustration because the characters should know what they're getting into. For example, when Prodigy gets the aliens onto their island, they make little to no effort to make them secure. First of all, they put all these terrifying space creatures into one room instead of separating them so they're easier to control. This way, if one alien gets out, the rest are still contained. Or how about having guards around the room at all times? They actually make a smart move of not allowing humans near the eggs, but then don't think to have anyone guarding the outside of the room itself. At least have like a squad of guys down the hallway in case one of your retarded child robots locks themselves inside one of the containers. And even though this place has like 1 million cameras, it seems like nobody is watching them except the one untrustworthy android. I mean, this is just an idea, but maybe have like 100 people watching the cameras to the one room that contains all the murderous fucking aliens?
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
That's not even considering all the failsafes that could be put in place just to stop human error. Like making the doors to the cells need at least 2 people to open them. Or have one-way mirrors surrounding their containers so they can't obviously plan a way to escape. Or have some kind of failsafe where the room explodes or the air becomes toxic if any of the aliens leave their cells. Some sort of dead man's hand kill code or something. I mean, literally do anything except having the responsibility fall to these experimental children that are unable to grasp the situation that they're in. Throughout the entire show, all we hear is how smart everyone is in this Jurassic Park island, but we never actually see anyone act with any intelligence. We got a genius rich guy, super smart androids, super smart baby robots, and a revolutionary scientist that made the whole thing happen. Yet, all these people are outwitted by Slightly, someone who can barely string a sentence together without almost having a mental breakdown. This Indian kid is so obviously up to something that he's quite literally bursting at the seams with emotion, yet the only one who seems to notice is Timothy Olyphant. I mean, this guy sneaks into Hermit's room after blatantly pointing out that he dislikes him. He then suspiciously tries to lure Hermit away from everyone else with this idiotic ploy about showing him something. Yes, that's his actual plan. All the while, he's twitching and staring like he's about to murder Hermit.
That guy's here to kill me.
Yet Hermit does nothing about this. He doesn't tell any of the scientists or warn his sister, nothing. He just shrugs it off and walks away. Yeah, having a weird android with a child's mind creep into your room is totally fine. I wouldn't worry about it. I'm sure if this kid had literally said, "Hey, come with me to this isolated location so I can murder you," Hermit would have had the same stupid blank stare he always does, and still would have done nothing about it.
What an idiot!
This plays into a larger issue with the characters, which is a general lack of communication. Half the problems in this show would be solved if people just gave their friends a heads up about what's going on every once in a while. And not to keep coming back to Hermit for examples, but he's essentially the poster child for bad writing, so here we go. So in episode 2, Hermit narrowly escapes the xenomorph. And soon after getting away, he quickly runs into a fellow soldier. However, instead of immediately warning this guy about this highly dangerous alien that's chasing him, Hermit instead asks him if he's seen any animals. Wait, that's all you're gonna say? I mean, maybe I'm just not as cool as Hermit is, but if I were in his shoes, I'd probably warn my friend about the evil alien trying to murder me, and then would immediately try to leave the location. Hermit instead refuses to give out any of this valuable information, and then goes on to try and evacuate these rich assholes. And yet, he still doesn't mention this to anyone. This of course leads to the alien showing up and killing everyone at the party. Which all could have been avoided if Hermit had decided to act like a real human being instead of a mute piece of shit. And this is just one example, but this problem is pretty rampant through Alien Earth, and it makes the show feel overly frustrating to watch. I mean, there's a point where you stop caring about these characters, and instead almost hope for them to die because they're too much of a liability. Throughout this video, I've proven that despite being a medic, Hermit is never shown saving anyone, and is actually personally responsible for the deaths of at least tens of people, all because of his own stupidity. This is not how you create a likable or compelling protagonist. Number 4. Aliens. You know, there was a time in cinema where the xenomorph was a very intimidating and fearsome antagonist. It was a creature that was intelligent, creepy, vicious, and it couldn't be reasoned with. It was essentially the embodiment of death and the fear of the unknown, which was a big part of the reason it became such a successful franchise. But now, it's become yet another in a long line of played out sequels and rebooted IPs. Like the Terminator franchise, there were really just a couple of good films that were made like 40 years ago, which built enough goodwill and nostalgia to push forward a series of crappy spin-offs, prequels, and sequels that nobody wanted. And now that goodwill has dried up with all the constant disappointments. But like everything else nowadays, all we have left is soulless corporate cash grabs that try to use famous IPs to pump out crappy stories. Disney knows if they slap an alien skin on the cover of a show or film, there will at least be some core audience that will take the bait. And sure, they will do a good job at making everything look pretty. It will resemble the good old days when these franchises were cool and new. But it won't have any of the heart in it. I mean, the aliens themselves are hardly in the show. And even when they are, it's never the same. They aren't intimidating or threatening, they don't represent an existential fear of the unknown or a looming threat to humanity. They're just part of the theme park now. And so that's where we're left with this franchise. Just another rotting zombie waiting for that last pickaxe through the brain. That last financial failure that will shelve this IP forever. What was once a mighty beast at the box office is now reduced to a forgettable and pathetic television series that will likely never get a second season. And so this is how the Alien franchise dies. Not with a roar, but with a whimper. Number 5. Existential Dread. So it seems that the xenomorphs in this show have been thoroughly declawed. They are no longer fearsome creatures that inspire dread and horror, but are instead cute little puppy things that you can pet and make friends with. Aw, how cute. Yep, this is what these once terrifying creatures have been reduced to. Look at it in all its glory. Now, of course, an android communicating with an alien, or somewhat making an alliance with it, isn't inherently a horrible idea. We've seen it happen to some degree before, and even aliens explored the idea of weaponizing the xenomorphs on some level. However, the idea is far different than the execution. And this, like everything else in Alien Earth, is completely crucified into being the worst version of itself. Wendy Sue gains the ability to not only communicate with aliens, but to completely dominate them to the point where they don't even kill humans that she doesn't want them to. This immediately takes away the idea that the xenomorphs are threatening creatures, as they now follow the command of the main character. They are no longer uncontrollable and super dangerous beasts, but instead have been made into subservient lapdogs, waiting for whatever their glorious girlboss desires. The ultimate antagonist of this series have become sidekicks in their own story, and it just feels like it's ruined their edge or mystique. And even before this, the aliens serve no threat to the main cast, as everyone has plot armor so thick that it would make Jon Snow spit. In fact, outside the two Maginot crew, the xenomorphs don't kill any of the main characters. You see, when the writers want to make the alien feel threatening, they'll usually just throw a random squad of soldiers in its way to quickly be dispatched. And when I say quickly, I mean in seconds. It tears through tens of armed men in an instant, yet if you're a character with an actual name and screen time, then you're completely safe.
Right, yeah, of course.
The xenomorphs, for some reason, lose all their killing abilities. They become slow, stupid, and far less murderous. I mean, Hermit is able to outrun this thing, and he's neither armed or a capable fighter. And man, look how quickly these elevator doors close. They sure don't like wasting time in the future. You think that being this close to an alien would surely mean you're doomed, right? After all, it could claw this woman to death, eat her with that weird tongue thing, or take her out with the tail. But nope. Instead, the alien just gives her a little trip, and then it lets her run away because we needed a chase scene, I guess. It even struggles to catch up with her. But, like, how? Did the alien want to chase her for fun? Do they like to play games like this? It's honestly hilarious how often this pattern plays out in the show. Every time there's a main character on screen, the alien will just stand there and study them for huge lengths of time, but every time there's a red shirt, it will instantly take them out like it's some cheap slasher villain. And do I need to point out that aliens aren't murderous maniacs that run around killing people for fun? Actually, most of the time, if not always, the alien's true goal is to capture victims and bring them back to their hive where they can be impregnated. This makes the aliens more than just basic monsters, as they have goals outside of mere killing. But Alien Earth instead decides to remove this aspect entirely. Only once in the entire season is a character captured by a xenomorph. This happens when Hermit is taken and Wendy needs to go rescue him. However, it makes little sense as Hermit is already in the room with the eggs, and so the alien actually takes him further away from where he needs to be in order to be harvested. So instead of following the logic of how the aliens reproduce, this element is instead used as a cheap way for the writers to create a connection between Wendy and the xenomorphs. But despite this, the aliens make no effort to capture or harvest the main characters. In the original Alien film, the xenomorph captures multiple members of Ripley's crew and even starts making its own hive, and it all happens in less than 24 hours. Yet in this show, the aliens have days on the island and do nothing of the sort. It's like they're just tools for the plot instead of being their own characters. I mean, for fuck's sake, we waited an entire season for the xenomorphs to escape their cells and start wreaking havoc on Prodigy, yet it never really happened. Sure, the aliens got out, of course, but it never really felt like that oh fuck moment. They get out and they just obey Wendy. Would it not have been better when the children are captured? Cavalier says that he's going to decommission them. Then, out of sheer desperation, Wendy frees the aliens in order to create enough chaos for them to escape. But oh no, the plan somewhat backfires as it turns out the aliens can't really be controlled, which then just makes them a threat to everyone. The aliens are then re-established as the major antagonist of the story, one which Wendy has to overcome. But why do that when you can have puppy dog aliens that are kinda cute? Cause they just love mama.
They're never gonna stop!
Endless trash!
This show is just a middle finger to the Alien franchise. It spits on everything that made this an interesting universe. The characters, the concepts, the very fucking aliens themselves are all so laughable, it makes you kinda wanna cry. Number 6. Bad dialogue. Well, if I could compliment Alien Earth, it would be to say that it's consistent. Consistently awful, but consistent nonetheless. And nowhere is the writing more terrible than in the dialogue. And to be fair, the people acting it out doesn't make it much better. Now, for the sake of everyone's time, I'm only going to use one scene as an example, otherwise we'd be here all day. And strap in, it's going to be rough. So in episode 6, Hermit goes on patrol with his 2 squad mates, which I'm fairly certain we never get the names of, but let's call them the Acolyte and Random Dude. The 3 of them have a discussion about aliens, hybrids, their own positions at the facility, and how the island functions. These are topics very important to the plot, as well as to the characters personally.
I'd rather be out here with the bugs, lizards, and slugs. Suits me fine. Scary shit's in that lab.
If you're wondering if the Acolyte is both deaf and perhaps has a certain mental problem, you're not alone. But while this dialogue is super clunky, we now know that the Acolyte is afraid of the aliens in the lab, and rightly so. Keep that in mind for later though.
You mean the monsters?
At least give us a heads up before you inject this guy with chronic retardation.
You mean the monsters? Monsters?
This is a grown man speaking, right? Like this is an adult and not one of those cancer baby androids? Or have the writers simply forgotten what real human beings sound like? Why is he calling them monsters and not aliens, or even xenomorphs? After all, the company somehow knows that's what they're called. Wouldn't the security team be given some prep on what these things are, since it's their job to safeguard the aliens and kill them if they escape? After all, it's not like Prodigy would benefit from not informing them about what the aliens are or what they do. But anyway, the pain is just getting started, so why stop here?
Is that really your sister? In that machine?
Yeah. I think so.
Did you hear that? Hermit was just asked a super deep and important question about his android sister's identity, and he just said, "Yeah, think so."
Think so. She is to me anyway.
So in the last couple days, Hermit has been reunited with his sister Wendy, whom he thought had died years ago. Not only is she alive, but she is in a robot body that has been melded with AI technology, which makes her one of the smartest minds on the planet. Since this procedure is a mystery and was only vaguely explained, there is a very reasonable doubt that this is Wendy at all, and very well could just be a copy of her consciousness. A consciousness used for a baseline personality for an advanced AI. But that has to make you wonder, is this still Wendy even if it's a copy of her consciousness? If it is an exact copy, would that make a difference to Wendy? Or to Hermit for that matter? Is Wendy really conscious, or is she just a robot that's really good at mimicking a person? At what point does the machine aspect of her personality take over the humanity? Can she really be both man and machine?
I don't know what is going on, but somewhere our wires got crossed.
My point being that these are the kind of big philosophical and scientific questions that Hermit is probably grappling with. So when the Acolyte asks him,
Is that really your sister? In that machine?
there should be no easy answer for this character. This is a deeply traumatic issue that would shake anyone to their core, and yet Hermit passes it off like he's just been asked if he wants his sandwich plain or toasted. We could have learned so much about how Hermit thinks, about how he feels, and how much he understands about what happened to Wendy. But I guess he just doesn't think that much, does he? What is the point of having these big philosophical problems in this show if they're never going to actually address them? So anyway, the conversation then shifts to clunky exposition dumping.
I heard Yutani's pissed. I sent some of our cyborgs to get our monsters back. That's why we're here patrolling.
Yes, explain beat by beat why you're here like a totally regular person. Of course, what makes this so unnatural is that these characters would be fully aware of what's going on and why they're on patrol. And of course, Hermit doesn't ask any questions that prompts random guy to say this, he just makes some statements. That's because this information is context for the audience and not for the characters in the scene. Pretty much a staple of crappy writing. We also have to recognize the emotional delivery in these lines here. Everyone is so nonchalant and relaxed like this is all pointless. But it's been stated that Yutani, another super powerful corporation, is pissed off and may even send cybernetic soldiers to come retrieve super dangerous aliens? This is not a chill conversation topic. Random guy is saying that there might be a war on soon, and this island is a primary target of invasion. And yet they act like this is no big deal. How about you deliver this important expositional dialogue with even an ounce of concern? You know, be on alert and worried about the fact that your lives are now at stake.
Break the illusion and the whole thing is illusioned. You see, you are not really John.
No, I know.
You are pretending, and that is acting.
What am I saying? That would mean that these characters would have to act and speak like real human beings. And that's just unheard of in this show.
We're on an island in the middle of fucking nowhere. No way on, no way on. This is just to keep us busy.
That's an odd reaction as someone telling you that there could be an attack on the island. If there's no way on or no way off, how did people get here? How is anyone being supplied or fed? How is anything being built? Surely there would be boats patrolling the shores, perhaps even a navy. There would also have to be air transportation, which we actually see multiple times and was actually the way these characters even got to the island in the first place. Now, of course, this is another clunky bit of dialogue that is supposed to tell the audience that Hermit will have a difficult time escaping. However, in the context of the scene, the character's information, and what we already know, it makes no sense. But let's skip ahead a bit.
You grew up around boats? Stop. Stop what? We got a good thing going here. We're alive. We get paid. Don't fuck it up.
Ah, okay. So she doesn't want Hermit to try and escape the island with his sister because that might jeopardize her payday. Not much, but a little character depth there. And I guess this stupid lie about having no way off the island was an attempt to dissuade Hermit from trying to leave? Still doesn't make any sense, and you could have come up with a better lie, but whatever. We then cap the scene off with this.
The monsters are here.
Maybe, but if I'm here, at least I know.
Know what?
Where they are.
Okay. Let's break down the information this character provides about herself. So in the beginning of the scene, the Acolyte says that she's afraid of the aliens inside the lab. She then tells us that there's no way off the island, and rounds out the conversation by again saying that she's afraid of the aliens, but at least she knows where they are?
What? What the hell are you talking about? What?
So according to the Acolyte's own logic, she is trapped on an island full of aliens that she's afraid of, while simultaneously not recognizing that if she left the island, she would both be further away from them and would still know where they are. So what does knowing the location of the alien do for you at this point, if that also means they can kill you? Surely it would just be best to get as far away from there as you can. Of course she thinks that leaving would be challenging and would hurt her income, but I imagine this would be preferable to being dead? I mean, for fuck's sake, she can't even maintain consistent motivations within the same goddamn scene. But hey, why expect this kind of internal logic from the characters now? It really boggles the mind once you realize how many people this scene had to go through, only to end up on our screens in this mangled state. I mean, someone had to write it, a story editor had to look at it, the studio heads and director had to sign off on it, the set designers and costume people probably had to read it, these people had to act it out, the director again had to give his thumbs up to the entire scene, and then of course the editors, the sound designers, the executives, all are involved in this process. And nowhere along the line did someone stop and ask themselves just what the fuck they were doing. Supposedly a professional team of creatives heard this.
You mean the monsters?
And we're like, yes, that's the take we wanted. Nobody seems to care about what's going on in the story, and it bleeds into the writing and the very delivery of that writing. It was like everyone was just asleep at the wheel. Again, this is just one scene, but it's not alone in its stupidity. This show is filled with bad dialogue, stupid characters, and horrible deliveries. Number 7. Wendy Sue. A major reason Alien Earth is yet another Disney failure is because they keep going back to drink from the same well, and that being the infinitely powerful and flawless girlboss, also known as a Mary Sue. And if you are somehow not aware of what this character type is, then let me list out the most notable traits. A Mary Sue excels at everything with little effort or training, possesses exceptional beauty, intelligence, and power beyond reason, rarely faces meaningful consequences or failure. Other characters exist mainly to praise or support them, and the story often bends logic to favor them. Disney has done this countless times and has always been ridiculed for this kind of character writing. We saw it with Captain Marvel, Rey Palpatine, Wendy from Peter Pan, Snow White, Kamala Khan, Cassie Lang, Ironheart, Jane Foster, She-Hulk, Milan, and Valley of the Wind. Oh wait, you get my point. Now it seems that yet again we're going through this routine with Wendy. After all, she excels at everything with little effort or training. While sure, she practices her alien speech a few times, she essentially masters it right away by having the aliens kill for her and follow specific commands. Her ability to communicate with technology simply happens in a flashback with no explanation as to how it works. And finally, in the last episode, it's revealed that she can completely control androids with her mind. On top of this, she's extremely skilled in combat and strategy. None of these qualities and abilities are earned in any way, Wendy just has them. This also plays into the next Mary Sue quality, as Wendy possesses exceptional intelligence and power beyond reason. Though that haircut isn't helping in the beauty department, that's for sure. While yes, Wendy is artificial intelligence, it still makes her way too overpowered to be the main character. See, it's more interesting watching an underdog go through a story, learning from mistakes, gaining skills, and having to overcome obstacles that ends up earning them great rewards. This is called payoff. Getting awesome abilities for no reason is boring, and it makes Wendy uninteresting because she hasn't had to struggle to get them. On top of this, Wendy also rarely faces meaningful consequences or failure. The only time she fails is when Hermit turns against her on the boat when they try to leave the island. Wendy is then captured and put in a cell with the other hybrids. While this is technically a setback, it actually turns out that she can immediately escape the cell because she can control technology with her fucking mind. And oh yeah, she can also call murderous aliens to do her bidding. So the consequences of getting captured are non-existent, as she just takes down the villains in like 30 seconds. Other characters exist mainly to praise or support Wendy. Yeah, this is pretty apparent with Hermit and the hybrids, who end up completely obeying her by the end of the story. Even the show's villains respect Wendy or admire her on some level. The aliens, of course, are her pets, the scientists are fascinated by her, and she is also Cavalier's favorite hybrid. So Wendy isn't lacking in the praise department. Everyone is constantly in awe of how great she is. Which brings us to the last Mary Sue trope. The story bends logic to favor the character. And yeah, it certainly does happen with her. Even putting her ridiculous powers aside, there are still plenty of issues with the logic of the story, especially when it comes to this character. Going back to my previous example, Even though Prodigy is fully aware of Wendy's capabilities, they still lock her in a cell that is controlled by computers and is also for some reason surrounded by monitors, all of which she can mentally manipulate. Why bother locking her up in the first place if you're not even going to put any effort into making sure she doesn't escape?
Well, that's just lazy writing.
I feel like I'm constantly commenting on how horrible the security is in this show, but goddamn, does anyone want these things to stay locked up? First of all, make sure there's no electronics around Wendy, since she will only use them to fuck everything up. Lock the cell door with a traditional padlock, something with an actual key so she can't just snap her fingers and open the cell door. Then put like 100 armed guards in the hallway, so if she tries to leave, you can stun her. Also, separate the hybrids so they can't work together to escape. All of these things are well within the capabilities of this so-called boy genius who has the power of nations at his back. My point being that all of these other characters in the show are made to be retarded so Wendy can look even better. It's the classic move for shitty writers because they don't have the ability to make characters great on their own. And that kind of shit is pretty disingenuous and easy to spot. So yes, Wendy is a total Mary Sue and she fucking sucks. Number 8, the editing. Now I don't see many people mentioning this as an issue, but Alien Earth has a problem with its editing. There's a bunch of examples of this, but the worst is when Dawn goes to visit the graveyard. This whole scene takes place after the alien escapes its cell and goes on a rampage across the facility. So did this lady just ignore the fact that there's a murderous alien on the loose? I mean, she must have known what was going on, right? After all, this alarm goes off when Wendy unlocks the alien's cell. And even if she didn't hear that for some reason, she would have heard the gunshots or screaming. Something to alert this woman to the fact that going out into the jungle alone for no practical reason is really stupid. But whatever, the plot needed this woman to be here, I guess, so here she is. Okay, so the alien creeps up behind her and then this happens.
You okay?
Did you see that? So one of the guards shot the alien in the head and then it ran off? Wait, are aliens bulletproof now? Is that what's going on? Or did the bullet just skim the alien or something?
Come on now, you expect me to believe that?
Even the angle doesn't make any sense. You can see by the position in which this demented old crone is laying, she is facing the same direction the guards are coming from. That means that the guards would have been facing the alien's back when they were shooting at it. So how did they shoot the side of its head?
Yeah. Weird.
So the director wanted a reason for the alien to run off and not kill this lady, but they also couldn't have it be wounded because that would mean that the acid blood would get all over her and she would die. So the director did this clumsy edit and made the aliens bulletproof because they were lazy and thought they could get away with it. Now you might say that the alien's exoskeleton is resistant to gunfire, and I would agree with you to a point. It might hold off against pistols or shotguns or something, but assault rifles are pretty powerful, and still the fucking angle doesn't line up. Also, why didn't the alien just turn around and kill all of these people? The show makes it clear that the xenomorphs are more than capable of killing dozens of armed men with ease, so why does it choose to run away when 5 people show up? Why are the guards even out here in the first place? Shouldn't they be locking down the facility? I'm getting sidetracked. Another example of this sloppy-ass editing is when Hermit fights the alien in episode 3. So he's in this cargo container, and you see the xenomorph's tail come up behind him. You can see from this angle that it looks like the alien is coming up from the back to give him a little poke. But then it's revealed that the alien was using its tail to yank him outside from the front? What? How did he not see this giant tail come from the front of the door that he was looking through? I mean, does he not have peripheral vision? Why did the alien just not stab him from the front? How did it reach fully behind him and yank him outside when it was that far away?
What the fuck is this world? What have they done to us?
What did they do to us?
Number 9. No thoughts, just happenings. Something that really bothered me, and I imagine a lot of other people as well, was how the Maginot had a direct line of communication with Earth. We see this when the defector guy has a FaceTime chat with Cavalier. The two hatch a plan to sabotage the ship so it crashes into Prodigy territory on Earth.
This is so Cavalier can claim the aliens for himself and fuck over Yutani. But this immediately throws up some red flags. The main one being that it's made clear in the original Alien film that communication in space is not instantaneous. You can't just call up people on Earth when you're across the galaxy or on the other side of the solar system. Depending on the distance, transmissions can sometimes take years to reach a location. That's why the crews have to rely on Mother, the ship's onboard computer system. The machine helps with mission directives, special orders, navigation, communication, and so on. However, it's preloaded with information before the ship goes off on a mission. So what is the point of having this thing on your ship if you can simply call other planets or even specific people anytime you want? What's the need for a computer giving you a mission directive if you can have the head of a corporation on the line? Surely that makes the whole system rather redundant, right? Why didn't Morrow just call up Yutani when he found out about the sabotage? Actually, come to think of it, how did the Defector even know about Cavalier or Prodigy? We know that this was a decades-long mission for the Maginot crew. And Prodigy is a really new company that was started by a young kid. So how did this guy find out about it? How did he get the personal information of Cavalier himself? How did their entire relationship begin? None of this makes any fucking sense, and it's clear that the writers dug themselves into a hole with this timeline issue. They wanted to make Cavalier the big mastermind behind the crash, but then they had to bend the entire story around the idea, breaking the logic of the world itself. And if you think this isn't a big problem, then I need to remind you that the whole origin of the show's plot comes from this one interaction. If Cavalier never convinced the Defector to crash the ship, the whole show wouldn't have happened.
What the fuck?
Another stupid writing mistake is the character of Curly, or Jane, or whatever the fuck her name is. Now for most of the season, Curly's just in the background with fuck all to do. However, it's established early on that she's jealous of the attention Wendy is getting. She makes it known that she wants to be the new favorite and begins to suck up to Cavalier. But after this character trait is set up, it's immediately dropped altogether. We never see Curly really trying to one-up Wendy. She never attempts to communicate with the aliens, talk to technology, or any of the other crazy stuff Wendy is capable of. She never makes an effort to undermine anyone or work against the group to gain favor with Prodigy. Which is a shame because that would have been a far more interesting direction for her character. It would have been far more suspenseful had Curly become Wendy's personal rival. Maybe her feelings of jealousy drives her to take control of the aliens, and in doing so, strips Wendy of what makes her so special. However, instead of this, Curly just becomes a passive character. After all, she has the opportunity to tell Prodigy about Wendy's escape, but she doesn't do anything about it. This makes Curly far less interesting, because she just becomes an underling of Wendy instead of a dangerous antagonist. I mean, they're supposed to be children after all, right? Every group of kids has a tattletale in it.
You're goddamn right.
Overall, Curly just seems to be forgotten about and pushed to the side, which is really disappointing because out of all the hybrids, she had the most potential for depth. The failure to implement her character properly is a symbol of incompetency. They had this character all set up and ready to go. All they needed to do was execute, and even then they failed. There is no thought put into this plot and no effort put into the characters. And what shocks me the most about all of this is that people still praise this show. But don't. Demand better from the people who are wasting millions of dollars, as well as your time. Number 10, the positives. It would only be fair if I pointed out some of the stuff I liked about this show. Because it can't all be bad, can it?
Wrong!
Well, I like the costumes and some of the set designs. They remade the look of the Nostromo really well. Actually, too well in fact. Because these ships should have nothing in common. Like the Maginot is supposed to be this big fancy research vessel, right? It had a specific mission with a very important cargo. So why does it have the same design and layout as the Nostromo? Which was just a blue-collar vessel. It was a freighter, and that's why it was so fucking dark and mechanical. The differences between these two vessels should be night and day. To make a real-world comparison, the Maginot would be like a private jet, and the Nostromo would be like sitting near the toilet during a red-eye. So even when the show does something right, it ends up shooting itself in the foot. Oh right, I'm supposed to be saying something positive here. Okay. Well, I like the... Number 11. I guess I'm finished. Like any good essay, I will round everything out by reiterating the point I made all the way back at the start, which is that I don't think the people who made Alien Earth really wanted to make a story about aliens. I think they wanted to do something different, but I'm not exactly sure what that was though. Did they want to make things funny and not take the show too seriously? Or did they want to go deep and ask questions about consciousness and the nature of humanity? Something a bit more high concept maybe? In the end though, there wasn't a clear vision and it made everything feel loose and clumsy, like it wasn't all connected. The original Alien films were pretty tight in terms of storytelling. The characters had clear goals and objectives, which was mostly just to survive. In Alien Earth, however, we never really understand what anybody is trying to achieve. Like, we know the corporations want the aliens, but why? What do they want with them? Apparently Wendy wants to rule, I guess? Whatever that means. But what does Kirsch want? Or Curly? Or what about Hermit? Nothing is clear, as everything is just covered in confusion and inconsistency. So in the end, it's hard to really get invested in the story because things are just happening with no real purpose or reason. And that makes Alien Earth a failure. Because all the money in the world can't buy you good characters, great dialogue, fascinating concepts, an interesting world, and a compelling story. You have to care to get that. You have to understand what makes the brand work and what the fans want. But again and again, Disney proves that's something they'll never grasp.